Welcome back to the deep dive. You know the drill. We sift through all the noise, the reports, the data.
And we try to give you the clearest possible picture of what's actually going on.
Today, we're looking at something in international conflict resolution that just seems, well, upside down.
Yeah, it really turns the usual diplomatic script on its head.
We're kind of used to sanctions hitting, the financiers, the military commanders, the expected targets.
Right, but this time, Kyiv has targeted the very people who were supposedly there to negotiate peace, to stop the fighting.
It's a pretty startling move.
Definitely. So, our focus today is this decision by Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky, sanctioning key Russian officials who are right in the middle of peace talks.
And in this deep dive, we want to unpack that. Who exactly got hit? What are their backgrounds?
And importantly, what reasons did Kyiv give? And maybe most critically, what does this tell us about, the chances for dialogue going forward?
So the basic facts. This past Sunday, reported November 9th, 2025, Kyiv announces these new sanctions.
And the bombshell is that the list includes top Russian peace negotiators. Not just political figures, but the actual negotiators.
It feels like more than just a statement. It seems to damage the actual mechanism for talking.
It really does.
Yeah.
So let's get into the names, because the specifics matter a lot here. This wasn't just mid-level staff.
Right.
The most prominent name is Kirill Dmitriju. He's known as an economic advisor to President Putin, sure, but the reports explicitly tag him as a key figure in the peace process.
And he also runs the Russian Direct Investment Fund, the RDIF, so he's a big deal financially, too.
A very big deal. He was acting as one of Russia's lead negotiation managers. But he wasn't the only one.
Okay.
The list also included Lieutenant General Alexander Zorin. Now, Zorin was publicly known as part of the Russian team during those talks in Istanbul earlier this year.
Istanbul. Okay, and that's interesting because those talks, they didn't end the war, obviously, but they weren't a total wash, were they?
Not at all. Our sources really highlight this. The Istanbul process, which Zorin was part of, actually led to some concrete outcomes.
Like what?
Agreements for exchanging several groups of prisoners of war. And, just as importantly, exchanging the bodies of soldiers killed in action.
Wow, okay. So actual, tangible humanitarian results came out of talks involving Zorin.
Exactly. That success built purely on dialogue, on having those channels open and functional.
So if you then sanction the guy who helped make that happen, what message does that send about future talks? And it feels like you're rejecting the very dialogue that actually produced something useful.
It certainly makes you ask whether Kyiv sees any kind of engagement, even on purely humanitarian grounds, as legitimate if it involves these particular individuals now. It's like a hard stop.
Yeah.
And just to round it out, the sanctions didn't only hit people. 5 Russian publishing houses were also on that list.
Interesting. Okay, let's circle back to Dmitriju, though, because his profile seems particularly unusual for this kind of role, right?
It really is. When you think Russian negotiator, you might picture, a KGB veteran or a career diplomat steeped in Kremlinology.
Yeah, or a military type.
Dmitriju is not that. What's kind of astonishing is his deep background in the West. He's Harvard educated.
Harvard? Really?
Yep, a former banker. His roots are in global finance, in Western-style capitalism. This isn't the typical hardliner profile you usually see targeted.
And it wasn't just a past life either, was it? Didn't he maintain connections?
He did. Our sources confirm he traveled to the U.S. multiple times, specifically meeting with people from the former Trump administration.
And the purpose?
Explicitly to discuss peace initiatives, to keep lines of communication open, trying to find diplomatic possibilities with the previous U.S. leadership.
So he was actively working those channels.
And his public statements seem to match that. He often talked about the importance of dialogue. He even warned Washington pretty directly not to repeat what he called the failed approach of Biden's predecessor, arguing that pure confrontation hadn't worked.
So he was advocating for engagement, maybe strategic economic ties, as a path forward.
That seems to be the picture, yes. Someone arguing from within the system, perhaps, for a less confrontational approach.
Okay, and this makes the timing even stranger, because didn't he recently make some kind of prediction about peace?
That's the crucial detail here. Just last month, speaking at the Future Investment Initiative Forum in Riyadh,
Okay.
Dmitriju made a very public statement. He said Moscow believed peace could potentially be achieved within 1 year.
Within a year. He put a timeline on it, publicly.
A concrete timeline, yes.
So, if you're Kyiv, and your goal is peace, why would you sanction the one senior Russian figure who just weeks earlier publicly floated a one-year time frame for achieving it, it seems.
Counterproductive.
Massively counterproductive if the goal is leveraging dialogue. It almost suggests the sanctions are aimed less at past actions and maybe more at shutting down future diplomatic avenues, or at least avenues involving him. Which brings us to Kyiv's official reason. What did they actually say? Because obviously, sanctioning the peace predictor wasn't the press release headline.
Right. The official justification completely shifts the focus back to his economic role, his RDIF job.
Okay.
In the statement, Zelensky specifically accused Dmitriju of spreading propaganda and attracting Russian investments into key sectors of the foreign economy.
So the charge isn't negotiating in bad faith, it's using his financial clout for propaganda and investment.
Exactly. The Harvard-educated banker is sanctioned not for his diplomatic role per se, but for using his international financial network to benefit Russia economically.
That framing is really key, isn't it? Equating attracting foreign investment with spreading propaganda. It makes sense given the RDIF role, but wow, it really poisons the well for using any economic cooperation as a future peace incentive.
It absolutely does, and Kyiv didn't stop there in their justification. They explicitly tied this move to Russia's previous actions.
The retaliation angle?
Yes. They framed it very clearly as a tit-for-tat response, specifically mentioning Moscow having sanctioned Ukrainian officials before, like Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko.
That raises a question about, well, proportionality, doesn't it? Is sanctioning Ukraine's prime minister the same as sanctioning Russia's key economic advisor and peace negotiator? It feels like maybe Kyiv is using that retaliation justification to escalate what kind of person gets sanctioned.
That seems to be a fair reading, moving beyond purely political figures to target the infrastructure of dialogue itself. It's like going from targeting the players to targeting the referees or the rulebook.
Disabling diplomacy, not just punishing politicians.
And they immediately use this move to push for more international action. Kyiv announced plans to, and I quote, share its proposals for new sanctions with the competent partners,
urging others to follow suit.
Yes, arguing that Russia deserves a far greater global pressure.
So it's a dual purpose then. Punish these specific individuals, Dmitriju and Zorin, and use that as a catalyst to rally more intense global sanctions, framing any economic engagement with Russia via people like Dmitriju as essentially supporting propaganda.
That seems to be the strategy. And this whole situation, these sanctions, they really throw a spotlight on just how fundamentally different the two sides' ideas of peace actually are.
Yeah, it's not just about where the lines on the map should be. It's about what ending the conflict even means.
If the main negotiators are now off limits, what were they even supposed to be negotiating about? There seems to be this deep structural divide.
What are the two positions, basically?
Well, Moscow has consistently said it wants a permanent solution. And that solution has to deal with what Russia calls the actual root causes of the conflict. That sounds like deep systemic changes they're demanding. Geopolitical shifts, security guarantees, that sort of thing.
Okay, so a big fundamental restructuring. And Ukraine and the West.
Their consistent call has been for something much more immediate. An immediate ceasefire. Stop the shooting now.
Which sounds reasonable on the surface, but that's the sticking point, isn't it?
It's the absolute deadlock. Russia rejects an immediate ceasefire outright.
Why? What's their argument?
Their stated reason is that they believe a ceasefire right now would just give Ukraine breathing room to reform its military and receive more weapons from its partners.
So Russia sees an immediate ceasefire not as a step towards peace, but as a strategic pause that benefits Ukraine militarily.
Essentially, yes. A way for their opponent to rearm and get stronger, making Russia's ultimate goals harder to achieve. They see it as a trap, basically.
So the negotiators, like Dmitriju and Zorin, were caught trying to bridge this enormous gap between one side wanting fundamental change and the other wanting an immediate halt that the first side sees as strategically dangerous.
An almost impossible task, you could argue, trying to reconcile two completely different endgames.
And sanctioning those bridge builders, well, it pretty much guarantees that the only way out is perhaps total victory for one side rather than any kind of negotiated settlement. You've just officially blocked the main authorized channels for that kind of talk.
You've essentially taken the diplomatic option off the table, or at least made it incredibly more difficult. It's like going from a rocky path to a sheer cliff.
Okay, let's try to pull the main threads together for you. Kyiv has sanctioned key Russian negotiators. People like Kirill Dmitriju, the Harvard-educated head of RDIF, who recently predicted peace within a year, and Lieutenant General Zorin, who was involved in successful prisoner exchanges via the Istanbul talks.
Kyiv says this is retaliation for earlier Russian sanctions.
Yeah.
But the specific accusation against Dmitriju is that he used his economic influence for propaganda. They're now pushing for broader global sanctions based on this.
The implications here are pretty stark. When Kyiv officially blocks the very people who were, at least on paper, tasked with finding a path to peace, people who had connections, like Dmitriju did with the previous U.S. admin, and who are putting timelines on peace.
It strongly suggests that Kyiv is now prioritizing global pressure and escalation over using those direct, albeit very difficult, communication channels. The tit-for-tat cycle isn't just hitting politicians anymore. It's actively dismantling the tools for de-escalation.
So here's something to think about. When things reach a point where both sides are sanctioning the individuals whose job it is to talk, the people who might, just might, be able to find some common ground on those deep root causes Russia talks about.
Does that completely slam the door on a negotiated end? Or does it just mean the conflict shifts entirely into a non-communicative, maybe even more existential phase where only battlefield results matter?
It certainly feels like a deliberate move by Kyiv to seal that diplomatic door, perhaps signaling a shift in their own strategy towards a much harder line. Definitely something to watch. That's our deep dive for today. We'll catch you next time.